UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Welcome to another episode of our UFO update. This one is about a very recent cattle mutilation in West Texas. I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating. We'll get into that, but first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Folks, have you taken a good look at the banks lately? On the surface, everything seems fine, but there seems to be a whole lot more going on underneath. It's like looking under the hood of a car and finding a mess of broken wires and parts. The parts are loans for homes, cars, and those credit cards we all use. Folks, they're hitting record highs. It's kind of scary when you think about it. Why risk your money for a tiny 5% return when things are so shaky? This is where Noble Gold Investments can help. They're like that friend who knows all about keeping money safe. They suggest gold and silver, oldies but goodies in the financial world. Plus, they've got a sweet deal, a free 1/4 ounce gold standard coin this month if you qualify. Pretty good stuff, right? If you're curious, just give them a call at 877-646-5347. It's just a chat, no pressure. They'll help you figure out if gold and silver are right for you. Or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Once again, the number 877-646-5347. Folks, we've invested in Noble Gold, and quite frankly, I'm glad we did. So I have a really close, good friend of mine, Mike Hamilton. I've been to his ranch. Peggy and I spent a couple of days there with Mike and Darlene fairly recently. In fact, that episode that you can see on our YouTube channel with Christine, where she's mashing the pedal, her words, and the UFO is like right here. Well, what if she's traveling down the road and she's not traveling? She just thinks she is. And when we presented that to her, that made her think, because it's high strangeness. There's no doubt about it. It is high strangeness. So Mike Hamilton joins us. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the record. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. So you sent me, and you know, you and I go back, I don't know how many years now. You sent me game trail cameras of UFOs going in the pasture, doing flybys, all sorts of stuff. But recently, you sent me a picture of a cattle mutilation, specifically, I believe, of a sheep. Tell us about that and just give us the backstory, please.
A good friend of mine works in the oil field in this area of West Texas. And of course, being there a lot of the time, every day out in the field, he's aware of different things that go on, as we all are. And those of us who spend most of our days outdoors pay attention. That's why we pick up on strange things from time to time. He called me and said, I have something I'd like to show you.
Wow.
And he is familiar with your channel, with your work, along with others. And so he did understand the livestock mutilation thing that has been going on, particularly with cattle. Although in this instance, it was about a 60-pound lamb. But the exact same body parts affected. The rear end cord out underneath the tail. The eye missing on the upside, the animal's laying on its side. He found it the first day after it happened. I was over there the second, third day. There were no marks on the lamb of any sort, except where the entire jaw had been exposed. The tongue was missing. Everything's gone down to the bone and the teeth. The eye was missing, but there's no chew marks. I'm very familiar, and so is Rick, my friend, with how to do the outdoors, and been in the ranching business now I was raised in it. I've known it my whole life. I know how to track. I know what tracks belong to what animal.
Right.
I am quite familiar with everything that we have in this area as far as wildlife. And there were no tracks anywhere in the area. The only tracks nearby, and in the pictures you'll see a little pond that catches water when it rains, which was roughly 50 feet away from the dead animal. And in that pond, the mud around it were some tracks belonging to raccoons, but nothing else. And there were no, as you can see in the pictures, the excision of the tissue around the jawbone is not chewed or pulled or torn. It's very clean cut. The same with under the animal's tail. By the way, this was not a ewe lamb. It was not a female. It was in Spanish, we call them castrado, a buck lamb that had been castrated when it was younger. I was not familiar with this. Everything that I'd seen, and that goes way back 40 years ago, the first cattle mutilation I ever saw, which looked the same. It was a cow, actually one of mine, but I didn't know what I was looking at. I assumed that it was done by vultures, buzzards.
Yeah, right.
This area, we have turkey buzzards in warm weather. They leave in October. They're just now beginning to come back. This was not done by buzzards. There was none of the telltale signs. So anyway, I had always assumed that when I would find what we now term a cattle mutilation, that it was a cow that had died of some natural causes or eaten something toxic. Mm-hmm. We have maybe a dozen toxic plants that grow here. Livestock rarely ever eat them unless they're just starved onto it. Anyway, we had a situation with the lamb that I recognized from the pictures that Rick sent me. And that's when I started sending them to you, and then went back the next morning with him and investigated it with him. It was not done by any wildlife. It was not done by predators. There had been no buzzards, no vultures. They're not even back yet. They're just now starting to come back. And there was no explanation that I could see in the surrounding area. Here's the real interesting part to me. I took a radiation detector with me. Mm-hmm. And as I got out of the vehicle and walked 100 feet to where the animal was laying in the pasture where I took the photos, I was picking up just the background, just the static radiation.
Normal radiation background.
Normal radiation background. And that changes from building to place,
sure,
to home to
sure.
vehicle. But the normal radiation background was 0.09. When I got up to the animal and laid the radiation detector on the animal, that more than doubled. It went to 0.2 immediately and remained there. If I would take it away, even 5 or 6 feet, it would drop back to 0.9. If I would take it back over, it immediately jumped to 0.2.
Right.
Not a huge amount of radiation, less than you would get in an X-ray, I'm sure. But still, why the increase? There's something not quite right.
What's going on?
And there's so much background story in that area. It's a few ranches over from mine. Not at liberty to disclose whose place. Those kind of things get a little touchy, particularly in this area where people are a little bit nervous about that sort of thing now. And there's believers and non-believers on every side of every issue, as you know. But I've seen very few really strange phenomena other than the wildlife and livestock scavenging of this sort, if whatever the right word is, mutilation for sure. But I'm not seeing some of the other things that were mentioned over in that area. We can discuss some of that if you want.
Let me ask you this: was the lamb drained of blood?
Absolutely, no body fluid,
and no blood around the carcass.
None.
It's
usually
a classic
when you find a dead animal, especially after 24 hours in warm weather, and we have warm weather right now. There's going to be body fluids exiting both ends of the animal, always.
Always.
In this case, completely dry, everything.
So, did anybody see any lights in the sky before finding the carcass?
Yes. All the time they see them in that area. Leaving one hillside or top, usually blue in color. Mm-hmm. leaving one hillside and traveling across and disappearing into the other hillside.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets even crazier. One of the guys that works for the rancher did say he would maybe talk to someone. Rick indicated that maybe, he told me this morning that maybe the man would talk to me.
The workers?
Yes.
The farmhands?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Two of them they're from Mexico originally, so their English is not 100% of, you wouldn't want to try to put them on the record. But I would be able to talk to him and
Sure.
get his story and then share it. Basically, I prefer firsthand information, but it's not always possible. And in in this situation, one of the ranch owners in that area totally doesn't want to discuss it at all.
Wow.
Doesn't want to talk about it.
Wow.
Will not, in fact. Then one of the other people that works there for him is he will talk a little bit about it. He'll say, yeah, we see lights, but that's about it. He doesn't go much further. Rick indicated that here's Rick's oil field that are actively pursuing production of oil and gas in that area. And so the people that work under Rick as a field supervisor type employee, the people that work under Rick are out there at night sometimes when they need to be, because oil field doesn't slow down. It's 24/7 as far as the production end of it. And one of his guys has had a run-in or two. He thought he was seeing a drone at night. He was out there at night. There's in completion of those horizontal wells that are drilled in that area. We're out here on the edge of what's called the Permian Basin in West Texas. Some of those wells go down 6,000-7,000 feet, and then they go lateral another 8,000 feet.
Wow.
To reach the formations that are the production area. And in doing that, they also use a lot of what we call formation water. When you produce oil and gas, you also get formation water, which is useless used to be disposed of in a disposal well to get rid of it, put back in the ground in a formation that was not a producing formation. In this case, now they have the technology to clean that water up and use it for fracking in those long horizontal wells. So they have huge frack ponds, hold gazillion gallons of formation water. Mm-hmm. You got to keep an eye on that stuff. You don't want it getting away from you and getting out on the surface of the land, because it's got a lot of dissolved solids and stuff in it that you don't want on the surface.
Sure.
So there's always people monitoring that stuff. One of the guys that was monitoring for Rick out there one night, this has been some time back, but he thought it was a drone. And it was a blue-shaped orb that came, checked him out, stayed above his pickup, 50 feet away. He said it was a white light, but it was round, much like Christine described, but he couldn't see a craft, just a light. And then it moved away from him. He determined that maybe it was a drone, and he started following it with his pickup. Then it came back to him. And he really felt harassed and scared at that point. In fact, he left and moved out of state after that. No longer works for the company. In another instance, same area, after they frack one of those wells, they do what's called flowback. There's a 3,000, 3,500 PSI pressure putting that, and as you know, you can't compress liquids. That's how hydraulics work.
Right.
Consequently, when you put that much pressure, you're fracturing the formation down there with liquid using hydraulic pressure. And there's a lot of pressure on that. It stays there. You let it sit overnight, 24 hours, a little longer, and then you start flowing it back, and you allow it to flow out. And And consequently, we got a little uninvited company here. El Gato.
El Gato, of course.
Yeah, my cat. My barn cat. I'm out in my barn, out in the shop to get away from the noise over there at the house. But when they start the flow backs, you got people that stay out there 24 hours a day, usually two men, and one of them will sleep while the other one's monitoring the flow back, the pressures, how much volume, etc. Because you have certain parameters you keep things in. As you can tell, I've worked in an oil field also. I'm not just in ranching. But I asked Rick about that, if there were other encounters, and he said, yeah, I had a flowback crew that was out there, and the one that was awake, one of them was asleep in a camper, a travel trailer. The other one was sitting in the pickup watching the meters. And he said a blue orb came out of the side of the hill, pretty good sized hill, but not mountain, came out of the side of the hill and approached his pickup within 5 feet of his face, over the hood, right up next to him. And he said the pickup began to move, to bounce around. He called Rick on the phone. This was at midnight. He called Rick on the phone, and Rick couldn't even understand what he was saying. He was hysterical. And Rick encouraged him to pray. And he also called his mother in Midland, Texas, and she encouraged him to pray. Short story, but he quit. He went back to Midland, and he no longer works in the oil field.
Let me ask you something, Mike. Is where the orb came, the pickup truck, the whole thing shaking, is this near a burial ground, an ancient burial ground, or don't you know?
It is. In fact, all of this area.
Surprise.
There's so much stuff here. I've got them on my place. Other ranchers do too. Almost without, it's hard to find a place around here that has not got artifacts and other evidence of ancient people living here. On my ranching operation, we've gone down in one particular place. We excavated down 6 feet deep. The on-site archaeologist that I had there said we were 10,000 years in the past at that point. And consequently, it's hard to find a place that's not, but there is enough evidence in that area, which is roughly 15 miles from where I'm sitting right now, as the crow flies.
Right.
There is enough evidence in that area to say for certain that, yes, there are probably more than one in that immediate area where there would have been shamanistic practices, so forth and so on.
Absolutely.
It has to be. Also, one of the guys from Mexico told Rick that this starts getting further and further out in left field, LA, but his statement was, translated from Spanish to English, the witch is hungry. Oh. This is after they had found a mutilated cow sometime back. Rancher didn't want to know. Rancher said, she ate something that killed her and the predators and stuff did this. But it's the exact same scenario. Exactly. The predators don't want to eat that animal. Do they detect the radiation that my radiation detects? I don't know what it is, but they won't eat it. In some instances, in the ones I've seen in the past, the vultures, buzzards, what we have here, turkey buzzards, they call them.
Sure.
They don't, they may fly up there and sit in a tree, but I don't even think they eat them.
And of course, coyotes, which will eat anything. I mean, if you leave a lunch bag with a crust of bread, the coyote's got that bag and he's running off with it. And they won't touch it. They won't touch it.
They don't. And neither do, I mentioned vultures and buzzards. Ravens, we have ravens. Right. They will eat the eyeball. That's it. Maybe the tongue, if they can get to it, something soft and easy to get at. But no, we don't see that. Even a possum. A possum is a four-legged buzzard. That's all he is. He's a scavenger. They won't eat him.
Let me ask you something. Did he call a veterinarian out to look at it?
Nobody ever has that I know of, LA. Everybody looks at it and says, you know.
Is the carcass still there, Mike, or did he remove it?
It's still there.
What about can you talk to Rick and say that L.A. Marzulli is willing to pay to have a veterinarian come out and perform a necropsy on the animal? Do you think he would allow that?
I'm dubious that he would.
Okay, the point is, we'll keep his name, the location of the ranch, everything private, and sub rosa. No one has to know who he is or where he is. That's all. But we can have a veterinarian in your area come out and perform a necropsy on the animal and get from him what we're looking at here.
It's possible. I mean, I know vets that do postmortems like that on the site. And of course, by the time we would be able to accomplish that, there's going to be some decomposition.
Right.
Pretty serious.
Yeah, it's already been at least a week,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's already been more than a week, or at least a week. And besides that, our temperatures it was 90 degrees yesterday.
Yeah, that's hot.
So I'm of the opinion that we might be a little bit too late for that.
Okay.
I could have asked permission to take the animal and put it in a freezer or something like that, because it was clean. The day that I saw it would have been probably the third morning after.
Yeah,
it's in my house.
You sent me the pictures, and the moment I looked at it, I said, "This is classic mutilation." I mean, it's absolutely classic mutilation, livestock, mutilation, and they always go for the same parts. And it's interesting. I honestly, and this is our in our film on cattle mutilation, which is number 6 in our ongoing UFO series, folks. This isn't going away. This happened recently in West Texas. So people can pretend that it's not there. People can say, well, it's scavengers of this. Scavengers don't do this. Scavengers can't drain the blood out of an animal. Lights in the sky, orbs, truck shaking. I mean, this is all the hallmarks of the dark side. This is what we're looking at. And this is why, our cattle mutilation film is so important to watch. It's not for the faint of heart. We call the subtitle is Calling Card of Darkness. And these ranchers are living it. I'm not, but Mike is, this is a few miles away from where Mike Hamilton's ranch is, and it's happening. And it's not going to go away. And we need to address it and understand that, in my opinion, this strange harvest, to quote Linda Moulton Howe, is to take those body parts that are taken and create artificial wombs for the hybrid babies, the hybrid entities that are taken from the women who are impregnated, and in the 3rd month of that pregnancy, they are re-abducted, and that fetus is removed from the woman's womb and placed in this artificial womb. And we believe, and it's in our films, that this is what the construct is all about. This is a deep dive into Hell's Kitchen. And the reason why we're talking about this with Mike here, and we created all these films, is to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and the herald of the return of the King Jesus. This kind of stuff is not going to be happening in the millennium when Jesus comes back and rules in Jerusalem. I guarantee it. This is the handiwork of the dark side of Satan himself and his minions, and it's a glimpse, unfortunately, into Hell's Kitchen. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. I'll give you the last word.
Sure. One more thing that I didn't mention. I did mention that some of the people who worked in that area had left and wouldn't come back. There was one guy, he's still there. The one that I may be able to talk to.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful that I'll get that opportunity and then get back with you. But he not only saw the orbs, he actually works in the oil field too for Rick and on a contract basis. And he saw the orbs and he was a little reluctant to get out of the pickup, but he did, to do what he was supposed to do at that particular wellhead. And he said the next time he looked over there were 2 bipedal beings covered with hair one 9 feet tall, one about 7 feet tall, 50 feet from him, 50 to 75 feet away. And he freaked out, jumped in the truck and left. And he doesn't like going back to that area anymore. That's the closest I've ever heard of those type creatures being seen in this area, although they have been observed in West Texas. There are a few, but that have made the reports to law enforcement. But this he's saying, we got him. They were here. The orbs are connected somehow.
No, they are. The orbs, the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, and the UFO, they're all part of the same deal. They are.
Yeah.
And, it's alarming. This is why people I don't know where Rick is. Rick a Christian? I assume he is, but, is he not?
Very sincere and dedicated, yes.
Okay.
He's never seen anything out there. He's out there every day, and he has never seen any of it. He's protected.
Yeah, he's protected. Yeah. Just like you and I are protected. Rebuke first and ask questions later. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the record. God bless you, sir. Really appreciate it. And give us an update. Give us an update if you can at some point.
Will do. I'll keep you informed.
That's it, folks. UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away, which is why we created all 8 films, and 9 and 10 are in the works, and we'll be releasing them probably towards the end of April. You're going to want to go to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Download our cattle mutilation film and take a deep dive into what the enemy is planning, not only planning, what he's engaged in. Thanks so much for watching. God bless you.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago.
The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucer. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brizzell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like.